So while we're just waiting for a couple of people to come back, we've got the operating beliefs of NLP. There's great value in a thing called multiple description. And what that means is if you have one way, one process, one whatever, then there's always more than one way you can describe it. You can describe things in many, many ways. Let's take, for example, the fast phobia cure of NLP. Take it as information. You can describe it as rewiring a neurological path in your head. It's essentially, a phobia is essentially a favoured path of electrical activity. That's one way to describe the phobia. The fast phobia cure, it kind of turns that favoured path in reverse, kind of flattens it out and removes the emotional charge. Another way is you see yourself seeing yourself. So that kind of mucks up the original structure of the problem as well. You get to see yourself seeing yourself, and it might just be another way of thinking about. So the idea, the concept of multiple description is extremely useful because it has the effect in that it stops people not preventing themselves thinking there's just one way to understand it. There's always more than one way to understand something, to describe something. So it in effect takes the blinkers off. It opens up possibilities. With the idea of some of the operating beliefs of NLP, there's a guy called Tebbets, Charles Tebbets, who has some rules of the mind. Now they're not rules, so I'll ask you to delete that. That there's some of the operational guidelines, like the operating beliefs of NLP suggests. One of these is that every thought has a physiological response. Well, at one level, if you think about it, it's a very specific example. Thoughts are inside your head, inside your body. It's parts of your physiology. Of course it has a physical response. Of course it does. And on another level, you were talking, Karen, you were talking about someone working with Tourette's, and when you were talking about it and they were talking about it, that happened, and it exacerbated the situation, and they got more Tourette-y. Another example, another interpretation of this is, what you think in your head, your body, has an effect on how you hold yourself, your state, your physiology, what's going on. Now, when you relax, or even talk about it, relaxing or think about it, that has an effect, does it not? Right. In a moment or two, I'm going to ask you to do another exercise. I'm going to invite you to put your feet on the floor, put your books down on the floor, and your hands on your knees. As you're sitting there and listening and breathing in a certain way, you might like to close your eyes. While breathing in, you may be aware, that's right, of sensation in your body. And perhaps, you can sense your own curiosity in your breathing, so your heart beats. And perhaps you've started to feel good. Perhaps you're aware of your own train of thoughts. And your breathing can become even more relaxed. Perhaps you're learning trance at more than one level if you were to think about it. Now, this way, you learn at many levels, consciously and with the other intelligence. Now, I'd like you to open your eyes and come back to the room to a more usual, for now, state of awareness. So one of the things that come out of the Milton model, the way I was introduced to it, is the concept of pacing and leading. It's one of the basic pieces of rapport. If you match someone, you remember this from your NLP training, if you match someone, you can start to match the breathing. And there's a difference between matching and mimicking, copying. I don't know about you, but when someone copies everything I do within a split second or two, it has the opposite effect of creating rapport, unless I know them and I know they're playing, in which case it would increase the rapport, but clearly an exception. So you can calibrate and notice what's happening if someone, say, starts to move away, and you think like this. "Oh," you simply readjust your behavior. So it's really simple, and it's rapport is a natural process. It goes on with friends, people at work, partners, inside and out, even in bars with strangers, behind bars, in front of bars, because sometimes you serve from behind a bar. One of the ideas I got when I did quality training is the idea of pacing and leading comes in many forms. Well, this is another multiple description. There's more than one way to pace and lead. You can pace someone by nodding every time they say something. So when they say something to you, you simply nod your head. You simply nod your head to confirm, that's it, and validate what they say. You nod yes because you are just validating their experience. This can be very important in establishing the trust, worthiness, and other ways to match physically. And then when one of those little things you can do is simply scratch your face. And someone 20, 35, 10 seconds later, they do the same thing. This is an excellent indication you're both in rapport and you are leading. And of course, you could just get into physical rapport and move just a little bit and wait and just notice, just calibrate what happens and notice, do they follow your lead? And when they do, so that's one way to pace and lead. And you know there are other ways to do it too. But pacing and leading in of itself, well, why bother? What's the point? Well, there's always some outcome in mind, therapeutic. At the end of it, a therapeutic intervention. And as we were discussing before, to be effective at therapy, you really do need a certain level of rapport to drive the process, to make that connection with people, to engender the sense of trust. Bless you. And there's another way to pace and lead. And this is simply, you're sitting there with your feet on the floor and you're listening. You're breathing. Everything I say, could you really argue with that? Well, yes, sure, of course you could if you wanted to. But think about it. Everything I just said was verifiably true. And I'm just validating your experience. But then if I go, you're sitting there and you're starting to feel really excited, you might think, well, no, I'm not actually. You might think I am, but I suspect you'd think I'm not. So it's about getting the little jumps, the leads right. And a process way to do this is called the observable, non-observable, observable, non-observable trance. So what all that means is, you pace people's ongoing experience. And okay, you've all got 5 fingers on one hand, so you can say 4 observable things, or at least things that you know for sure are true. You're sitting there, you're listening, you're certainly breathing, and your heart is beating. And you might just be curious to know what's going to happen next. Now, I don't know for sure that you are curious, but I look around, I see people's heads nodding, your heads nod. So it opens up the possibility, this lead from the 4 paces, to a lead about your developing curiosity. And now the next round applies. As you continue to breathe, as you continue to listen, you may be aware of the temperature of the skin of your hand. It's also quite possible that you're beginning to understand these patterns at an even deeper level than you are consciously aware of. And I wonder, as you sit there, would you like to allow yourself, in whatever ways you are, allow yourself to become aware of a luxury in your own awareness to go deeper into your learning trance, where you're learning about learning both consciously and unconsciously in this way. So what I want you to do is to break up into several groups of two within each one of you, and one of you can make a group of two to begin the exercise. Now, as we look